So thank you so much, Peppa. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to dive in on page 34, as Peppa said. It's always helpful when she does that because I'm like, where was we? So page 34, very bottom paragraph. And so we're going to dive in because as we go, we'll do the review on the way. So it says, how then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? And so if we're wondering, what are we trying to do with this big book study, where there's a couple of things, and what is the book Alcoholics Anonymous trying to do? Or what is the chapter more about alcoholism specifically trying to do? It is trying to allow me to answer that question of whether I am one of you, whether or not I have the illness of alcoholism as it's outlined in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what this book is, and you guys have probably heard me talk about it quite a lot, this is a book of mirrors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up my experience to the mirror of this book and see if my experience matches. And why does it say, how then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction? Well, that's what step one is about. The first step is about conceding to my innermost self that I have the problem as it's outlined in this book. Because I know you guys, I'm sure you didn't have anyone in your life nagging you before you came to AA. But all I'll say is I had people that were like, Paige, you got a problem. Now, to be fair, there's lots of people that I think you still got some other ones. That's just me. But I had people nagging me for a long time. You got a problem. I think you're an alcoholic. That sort of thing. And here's my experience. It doesn't really matter what other people think. You see, I show up to Alcoholics Anonymous with my andas and my yeah buts and my denials, and as y'all know, those come in buckets. Buckets, that's the unit of measurement for all the ways that I'm not like you and all the ways that I'm different and all my delusion and illusion and denial. So it does not matter what you see. What matters is, what can I see about myself as it pertains to this illness? Can I be convinced I have this illness? Now, what does it mean to be an alcoholic? Because again, I would show up and I would compare the consequences. I got sober young, and people would be talking about losing things that I hadn't even had an opportunity to have. So what does it mean to be an alcoholic? Well, there are two symptoms that we look at. The first is the allergy of the body. And that is a symptom that alcoholics have. And that happens as soon as I take a drink. So once I take a drink, there is something inside of me. It's like a little switch that goes off in the back of my head and it says more. And the more that I drink, the louder that more gets. So the allergy of the body is my inability to control the amount that I drink once I start every single time. Is that my experience? And I'll point it out. If you're hanging out on a Wednesday early afternoon to Wednesday evening, probably run out of other options. I'm just going to throw that out there. And I'm so glad we're hanging out. So that is the first symptom. Is that me? And we usually are quite aware of that first symptom, because why else would I need to quit? If I'm doing great and everything's great and nothing's burning to the ground, I'm great. To be fair, I did show up with I'm great. No, I don't need to do this work. I'm great. Things are fine. Capital F, it's fine. But what's the other symptom? Now, the other symptom is the obsession of the mind, and that's what this chapter is laser beam focusing on. Now, the obsession of the mind is the thought that I have when I am sober that tells me I can drink again. So when I am as sober as I am today, I have a thought that tells me this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. We're in daylight savings purgatory. You can't get drunk in the twilight zone. That is the difference between the UK and North American daylight savings. It's never happened. Listen, I'll tell you, I've saved some daylight when I was drinking, let me tell you. But it's a thought that tells me I just got to get it out of my system. A thought that tells me F it. F this, F you, F it. I need to get drunk. That's what we're talking about. And see, when I can concede that that's when I begin to have a step one experience. That step one experience is the idea that I can never ever safely drink again because of the allergy of the body. But because of the obsession of the mind, I will drink again. So it says the experiment of quitting for a period of time will be helpful. Now, one of the things too is when we talk about like conceding to our innermost selves, in the last few weeks, we spoke about 2 experiments that we can run. So if you're here today and you're like, I don't know, you're talking about this stuff, Paige, and I still don't know if it's me. Well, the book says if I'm not convinced I have the allergy, I can run an experiment to see if I have the allergy, which is to say, go out and have 3 drinks and then stop for a full 24-hour period and then do that again and again and just see how that goes. And I think we all know, if we're hanging out on a Wednesday, so glad we're here, we all know that that's not going to work. Now, one of the things too is there's a second experiment, and that second experiment is experimenting in, do I have the obsession of the mind? The obsession of the mind, again, the thought that takes me back to the first drink, the thought that I have when I'm sober. And the experiment that we were given is just don't drink. Just don't do it. Just say no drinking. Don't do it for 365 days consecutively. Because I kind of hope I could run that thing concurrent or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm hoping, but like consecutive 365 days in a row. Now I made this joke last week. I'm going to make it again. And we pray it's not a leap year. Don't give me an extra day, just don't drink. And so those are the tests that if I'm like, girl, I don't want to do all the work that you're talking about. Great. We can run those experiments. So it's saying that experiment of quitting for a year could be helpful. But we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we think your lived experience of trying to stay sober a year and watching that not work can be helpful. But we think we can be even more helpful to you and to professionals and to the people that who come into contact with us and want to help us. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking. So when we talk about the mental states that precede the relapse, so a thought that comes before the drink, we're talking about the obsession of the mind. So we will dive into a discussion of the obsession of the mind, for obviously this is the crux of the problem. Now, the word crux, Rob, he's on dictionary, core, most important part. Now, I'll also throw out, I got my 1930s dictionary, because I'm fun. I'm so fun. And in my 1930s dictionary, what I've got for crux is a setback, or something that is puzzling or hard to explain. So with both those definitions, I put it together, which is to say my main problem as an alcoholic is not that I can't control the amount that I drink once I start to drink. My main problem as an alcoholic is that I continue to go back to that first drink. That's my main problem. But also it's baffling. Because if anything did to me and my family and my loved ones what alcohol did to me, I would never touch it again. Anyone here have a bad tuna fish sandwich? It took you a long time before you even thought about having tuna again. And I'll tell you, the tuna didn't destroy my hopes and dreams and goals and dignity. Well, maybe a little the dignity. I was in the bathroom a while. Focus. And so, now this is bear with me, this is a trigger warning for anyone that has a 10 to 12-year-old boy or is working in a school. But you know how, kids in middle school, they'll repeat things over and over again with no meaning? Nowadays it's 6, 7, 6, 7, over and over and over again. And you might feel that, the obsession of the mind feels like Paige's version of it. But I emphasize it because it is so important for me to understand the obsession of the mind. And I find it so often glossed over or not understood. But also, I'm not just the middle school boy. I mean, emotionally a little bit. Don't tell me what to do. Do what I want. But also, that's what the book is emphasizing too. And it's hammering this idea home that I will drink again. So it goes on to say, what sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? So having my thinking dominated is another word to describe the obsession of the mind. If you know what it's like when you've had that little voice that says, take a drink. And it gets a little louder, take a drink. Gets a little louder, take a drink, 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 until whatever little willpower I was trying to put between me and that first drink gets eroded away and I'm drunk again. That dominated thinking. Now that's what we're talking about, but I also want to point out as we get into our next story, we're going to see that it is as much that as it is the suddenlies. So it says, and when it says the desperate experiment of the first drink, I mean, keep in mind, the desperate experiment really is another synonym for the obsession of the mind, because I've run this experiment before. You guys, if you guys remember being in like chemistry class as a kid, and you'd have to like run an experiment, you put a solvent and a solute or whatever it is, right? And you do it again. But then you don't have to do it again and again and again and again. You already got the results. And what are the results of the experiment that I've already run? I'll tell you my results. Yours might be a little different, but this little drunk, she cannot drink like a lady. She ends up behind a dumpster with wet pants. And that's like best case scenario. I know. Y'all are way more classy than that. Peppa would never. George, I know you'd never either. Brian definitely would though. Now, that idea that my experience is that I have demonstrated I cannot drink responsibly. And yet I go back to it again and again and again. That is the obsession of the mind. So it says, friends who have reasoned with him after a spree which has brought him to the point of divorce or bankruptcy are mystified when he walks directly into a saloon. Why does he? Of what is he thinking? So the results are that I've ended up divorced or bankrupt or morally bankrupt. That was me. I didn't have the money to go into debt, but like ending up in that situation, and I will then go back to the same thing, the drinking, which put me back into it. So is the obsession of the mind. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk, and I'm just going to, please bear with me, I'm going to do a bit of a screen share. No, not that one. That one, and then that one. I got to push the buttons. Whee! So as we go through, and some of you are probably quite familiar with this, and if not, don't worry about it. We're going to talk about it again and again and again. But this is what is known as the cycle of alcoholism. And the cycle, as it goes from never again all the way through to the never again, and I go through it again and again, that is my first step experience. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to see the symptoms of step one of alcoholism and the cycle. And we're going to see our friend, our homie, he's my homie, doesn't need to be yours, go through this. And so we're going to see him swear off and say, that's it, I'm never going to drink again. Now, we're going to talk a little about the spiritual malady. Now, that's not diagnostic of alcoholism. There are people who aren't alcoholics who have it, but we're going to point to it because that is what the spiritual awakening treats. That is the point of the 12 steps, to treat that spiritual malady. And then what we're really going to focus on right here is we're going to focus on the moment the mental obsession hits. Because that's what we need to see. Not because if I can see the obsession, I can stop it. That's not the case at all. But I want to be able to see the obsession of the mind, to see from my own experience that I too am in this cycle. And we're going to see what happens. We're going to see him examples where he's got the allergy, and we're going to see him go through this. So I want to preface this. Now, so this is our guy. It says our first example is a friend we shall call Jim. Now, I am a bit of like a history dweeb, Poindexter, perhaps, geek or nerd. Now, Rob, on the other hand, is what we call a history aficionado, or actually history husband. What? So he knows. I know this too, but this guy's name is Ralph Furlong. Now, Rob might have a sort of almost kind of picture of Ralph where it's like no pressure to even like, because there's that like thing where there's like a picture and you maybe see side of his cheek and it's like, and then it's like, is that even Ralph? So Ralph, not as photogenic as some of my other history homies. So if don't worry about it if you don't got it. I think it's funny. So our first example is a friend we shall call Jim. And I love Jim. So this man, it's not Ralph. It's not Ralph Furlong. Oh, do we know who it is? Is it a mystery? Because I had it as Ralph. Oh, he's going to put it in the chat. We're all learning together. Every day's a school day already. And I'll keep going while he's doing that. So, listen, I always say I don't stand much, but I do stand to be corrected. All right, so because I've had it as Ralph for a long time. So, Jim, this man has a charming wife and family. Delightful. So he's able to hold down a relationship, hold a family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. So what that means is he owns a car dealership that he either got through like his family or through marriage. So he became the owner of a car dealership. He has a commendable World War record. So what that means is that he was an upstanding man, an upstanding person. He had good morals and values and all of that. And so it goes on to say, he is a good salesman. So he's showing up, he's doing work, he's a personable guy. Everybody likes him. What's not to like? Oh, pictures, Bob F. I just try to catch things in the chat as I go. I have the attention span of a gnat. Alrighty. So he's a good salesman. Everybody likes him. He is an intelligent man. Normal so far as we can see, except for a nervous disposition. So when we're talking about all this stuff with Jim, we're talking about like, here is a guy who is a part of society. Because how often did I come and think, no, an alcoholic is somebody who lives under a bridge and drinks out of a paper bag. Now, to be fair, I was living and drinking under a bridge, just not with a paper bag. And I'm like, it doesn't apply to me. But like, I'm looking for all the ways it doesn't apply. And I'm like, no, but you don't understand. I can't be an alcoholic. I have a family. I have a career. I have these examples about how I'm an upstanding person. And what we're going to see is that does not prevent alcoholism. It goes on to say, when it says he is except for a nervous disposition. So what I believe we're pointing to there is the spiritual malady. You know, that feeling of anxiety. Now, again, there are people who have nervous dispositions who are not alcoholic. But I want to emphasize that is what we are going to treat in Alcoholics Anonymous through the spiritual awakening, which happens as the result of the 12 steps. So it goes on. Nervous disposition, if you're writing, you can make a note that is a sign of the spiritual malady. It says he did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated, he had to be committed. Now, if you're writing in your book today, you can make a note that is a sign or a symptom of the physical allergy. Because people who have the ability to control the amount they drink stop before violence and institutionalization. They usually stop when they feel a little woozy. That's usually when they stop. So if there is somebody who has the ability to control the amount they drink, they are stopping before violence and stopping before ending up in an institution. I'm just going to throw this out there. It's a 1930s institution. We're not talking about like a fancy, like Betty Ford, we got acupuncture and a spa. We're talking about like, yikes, it's not all good. So it says, He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum, he came into contact with us. We told him what we knew of alcoholism. So what did they know of alcoholism? So they shared with them the information they had about the allergy of the body. Hey man, once I start, I can't stop. That seems to be like the first symptom of alcoholism. But they also would have explained the obsession of the mind. The thought that I have when I'm sober that takes me back again and again to the first drink, and how that makes alcoholism a hopeless condition. And when it says, and the answer we had found, what is the answer? Well, the solution that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is the spiritual awakening. That is our solution. So they would have laid down that information, and it says he made a beginning. Well, what did he make a beginning at? Well, that would be the 12 steps, because the 12 steps are what takes me from that place of hopelessness, from that place of I will drink again, to that place of freedom, to that spiritual awakening that I need. That is the purpose of the 12 steps. And it goes on, that idea that he made a beginning. You know what that means? He did some of it. Yeah. Brian, he's holding up 3 fingers. Yeah, usually, in my experience, they did steps 1, steps 2, steps 3, and a little bit of 4, and sat right on that, Which, if I'm sitting on a 4, I haven't really done the 3. And if I haven't really done the 3, it's because I don't have a good understanding of step 1. Just going to throw that out there. But what it's saying is, like, if I don't do all of it, so sitting on a 3, sitting on a 4, that's one place where we get stalled out. I know nobody here would ever procrastinate the 9th step amends. I know nobody here, but I know I've been privy to that sort of behavior a time or two, Yeah, so that's another place where I get stalled out, or we get stalled out. I know, just calling us all out. Or doing it and doing all of it, but then stopping the daily actions of prayer, meditation, evening review, not doing my 10th steps as things pop up, not sponsoring, not working with others. That is another way in which he made a beginning, but didn't continue on this way of life. So I'm pointing that out because a lot of times I'll hear people say, I did the steps and they didn't work. And it's an interesting thing because in step 10, it says continued. And in step 11, it says sought to improve. And in step 12, it talks about practicing these principles in all my affairs. I didn't know my affairs stopped. I didn't know. Some of you are like, girl, you had affairs? No. I was having an affair with alcohol. Oh, quite a mistress that one was. I didn't know how to, I can't say quite a anywho, that was a torrid love affair, toxic relationship. You should have seen what alcohol did to me. But that idea that I haven't stopped having parts of my life. I got to practice these things in all my life, all areas of my life. And in 11, I'm meant to seek to improve, and it does not say that there's a stopping point. And in step 10, it's that I continue this process. And yes, growth is the name of the game. Let me be clear, actually. Spiritual growth is the name of the game. That's what I'm after. So I made a beginning, could be started on 4, could be stopped on 9, could be didn't want to sponsor others, 10, 11, 12. But it could also be doing the deal and going hard at it and then backing away and backing away and backing away. So I emphasize this to say that these 12 steps are a way of life. So it says he made a beginning. His family was reassembled. Well, that's good news. And he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. So he begins to work at the car dealership as a salesman for the whole company, that whole dealership that he used to own. I just really want to paint that picture because I'm sure that you guys are so spiritual you would be like, yes, I'm happy to be of service, but I'm going to show up with I used to run this whole thing and you're doing it wrong and you don't appreciate me and we wouldn't even be here without me. I know. You guys are more humble than that, but this little gal, she's spiritually sick over here. So like, I'm riddled with it. So I just want to point out where his spiritual condition is. Now, this is our guy, Jim. Now, when we get to our guy, Fred's not having internal conflict. Fred's not having resentments in this moment. But our guy, Jim, is. So it says he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Again, spiritual growth is the name of the game. And when we talk about like relapse, spoilers, he's going to relapse if you didn't figure that out. Just rude of me, spoiling the news. But when we talk about relapse, I know there's this like yearning to be like, oh, what happened? And we want to get in there and be like Sherlock Holmes. Well, and I will say it's elementary, my dear Watson. It's not what happened. It is what did not happen or stopped happening. Because if I have an understanding of step one, I don't need to wonder whether it's the butler in the library with the candlestick. You know what I mean? I know that a relapse is inevitable. I will relapse. That is the only conclusion for an alcoholic other than suicide. And so it is what didn't happen. And what didn't happen was the spiritual experience because I either stopped working the steps or I didn't take the course of action in the first place. And it really is that simple. And I say that because a lot of times when we're in and out and we're struggling, we think that there's something wrong with us or think that I'm bad or broken or this thing couldn't work. But when I see what I'm up against and I see what I got to do, it just makes it so clear. And I find that it eliminates so much of that shame. So it says, to his consternation, he found himself drunk 6 times in rapid succession. So that cycle. I'm never going to do it again. This time will be different. Off I go. 6. I'm just going to be like this. 6. That is 6. And yes, consternation. He's amazed, confused, like, how could this have happened? Relapsed 6 times in rapid succession. Yeah, I got hands on the wheel, Brian. He's like, there will be a 7th. There will be, oh, I see what he's going 6, 7. He's going 6, 7. I am shocked. I know. Kathy is as shocked as anyone that Brian would have the emotional maturity of a middle schooler, but by the way, I'm only giving a hard time because the joke he made last night, he blamed on me. I'll take credit for it. Alrighty. All right. So that is 6 times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him. So each time they relapsed, they weren't like, hey, 3 relapses, you're out. They were saying like, hey, we're going to show up. And on each of these cases, they worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. So going through this cycle, going through like, what did we not do? And it says he agreed he was a real alcoholic. He agreed he had alcoholism and in serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. He knows that that's inevitable. Moreover, he would lose his family for whom he had a deep affection. And so we're seeing on the 7th go, him swearing off. That's it. I'm not going to do this again. I don't want to go back to the asylum. I know I'm a real alcoholic. I know I can never drink again. I can't stay sober on that. And I don't want to lose my family. So that is him swearing off. Yet, he got drunk again. What? This is shocking information. Jim? Drunk again? What? So we asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning. I always want to throw out, wonder what happened to Monday? What was going on Monday there, Jim? I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. Now, I'm just saying, if you had to work at the bottom rung of a company that you were at the top of the ladder, is it going to be a little bit more than irritated? There's a thing that happens. You guys would never do this, but I know when I work with sponsees that sometimes when I'm like, hey dude, you got a resentment, what they do is they pull out the thesaurus and it's like, no, it's not a resentment. I'm just a little irritated. No, I'm just a little frustrated. No, it's not a resentment. I'm just befuddled. I don't know, I'm trying to come up with other synonyms. I don't got a thesaurus in front of me, but that'll surprise you that I don't. So he's got a resentment and he's not clearing it away. Now, he's not drinking just because he has a resentment. He's drinking because it is inevitable. So feels irritated he had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Now, any of you who have been employed, have you ever had a few words with the boss and it not be anything serious? And you don't have that, when your stomach like falls out of your butt and you're like, bleh, it's that going to the principals like feeling. Or, as I will say for those in the UK, the headmaster's study, that like, bleh, like it's awful. So, but it's nothing serious. And I wonder what they spoke about. Like, where were you on Monday, dude? I just like to play with that. So it says, then I decided, nothing serious, but then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. Now, what I'm going to point out is in the 1930s, this was not an insane course of action. They didn't have... I don't know any website that's one of those like buy a car online, but they didn't have one of those buyacaronline.co.uk sort of websites. They didn't even have like a lot of public transit. And if you were trying to sell a car, especially to somebody who didn't live in a major metropolitan area, you would have to drive out and take it to them. So what I will say is that there is nothing crazy about this course of action. He's going to go do his job. And it says, on the way, I felt hungry. So I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. Again, they don't have a Burger King or a McDonald's. Now, I know Nando's is not drive-through, but I wanted to make the joke that he didn't have the ability to pop in for a cheeky Nando's. That there is no like fast food sort of place. So this idea that on this barren stretch of land, there is a restaurant where he can eat, that's not crazy. That's not the obsession of the mind. And here's something that I find interesting. It says, I had no intention of drinking. And there's a lot of times where I'm working with sponsees and they'll tell me, a whole bunch of stuff. And they'll say, but I had no intention of drinking. And what's important about this is to have alcoholism. My intention doesn't matter. My intention to not drink cannot keep me sober. Yeah, I went to the bar with some friends, which, by the way, if I'm recovered, if I'm sponsoring others, I can go anywhere. There is freedom. I gotta check in with the work that I'm doing. I gotta check in with my motives before I go. But I can go anywhere on this earth. But if I am at step 1 or step 4, or even like, do you know what I mean? If I'm not done this work, my intention to stay sober has absolutely no power to keep me sober. And that is a baffling thing. And that is the power of the obsession of the mind. I don't want to drink. I have no thought of drinking. I don't want to do it. But Paige, I didn't even think about doing it. That intention has no effect. And he says, I just thought I would get a sandwich. That's not crazy. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place. And again, he's a salesman. He's on his hustle. He's on the grind. I'm trying to do that like hustler thing. I'm like, I don't got it. But he's on the grind. He's hustling. Oh man, and a brain goes back to like 2010. Every day I'm hustling. Sorry, focus. So he's even got good motives for going. He's hungry and he's going to try to find somebody to buy a car. Those are good motives. But without a spiritual awakening, my motives cannot keep me sober. And it says, which was familiar, that this place had been familiar, for I had been going to it for years. He had been here for years, and it even says I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober. So he'd even been there sober. He's got some examples of, no, I can go there. I don't feel like drinking when I'm at that restaurant. It says, I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking. Still no thought of drinking. Nothing is crazy. Sandwich, milk, hungry guy, likes his milk, great. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. And only when I've ever worked with a sponsee who was also in OA did that ding any alarm bells. But for the rest of us, it's like, oh yeah, he's a hungry guy. He wants another sandwich, another glass of milk. There is no thought of drinking. There is no intention of drinking. And here's what happens. Suddenly. And here's what is important. I have no effective mental defense against suddenly. I don't have anything that I can put between me and suddenly. I cannot stop suddenly in and of my own self. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind, and that is the obsession of the mind. The thought has to cross my mind before the drink crosses my lips. So the thought crosses his mind, and in that moment, he can't play the tape to the end. He can't phone a friend. He can't do a 50-50. Like he has got no way out of there. There is nothing that he can do to stop himself. That is the power of the obsession of the mind. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. And in this moment, we can be like, buddy, that is insane. But he can't see it. Just like I can't see it. And actually, for a long time, that used to gross me out. I'm like, oh, I bet that milk would curdle. Like, ugh. I'm like, what a weirdo, Jim. Like, I'm judging the poor guy. But the reality is, there's so much alcohol, like alcohol with like milk in it, like the White Russians or Kahlua. Like, we'll mix dairy products and alcohol. That's a thing we'll do. And believe me, I've mixed much worse than dairy and alcohol. So I am not one to judge. So that is the obsession of the mind. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart. So that vague sense that this is not a good idea. He even has an inkling that this is not a good idea. But it is not powerful enough to stop him. It is not enough to prevent him from taking that first drink. That is the power of the obsession of the mind. And why I can't play the tape to the end, why I can't think of the consequences, why I can't phone a friend, why I can't just like surf the urge and try to wait it out and just go for a walk. There is no power that is human power that is stopping him. So he vaguely sensed that he was not being too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. 2 sandwiches and a glass of milk couldn't hurt me. And then it says, the experiment went so well, I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. And that is that ease and comfort that we get. The experiment going so well is the ease and comfort that I get from that first drink. And when it says, I ordered another, and that didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. What is set off for him is the allergy of the body. But his main problem is not that he ordered another, not that it's going to start one more journey to the asylum for Jim. That's the spree. His main problem is he did not have anything in and of himself that would stop the suddenly. That was his problem. And we can again hold this up as a mirror in our lives. Do I have any examples where I said I wasn't going to drink? And even if I wasn't going to drink forever, was I not going to drink at the party? Was I not going to drink for finals? Was I not going to drink at the wedding? Was I not going to drink at the baby shower? Or while I was on probation? And then I had a thought. A case of the suddenlies, and when I came to the morning after, I was baffled as to how I could have ended up there. The suddenlies. Have I had any of those? And the suddenly, sometimes people call the suddenlies the F-its. There's different ways to look at it. The F-its are often also more of the F-it, I don't care. But have I had any of these experiences where I couldn't even think about it? Do I have experience where I tried to play the tape and I couldn't, and I'm like, it'll be different? Have I had experiences where I'm drinking at people or at situations? All of those are examples of the obsession of the mind. And it says, thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. So his spree, he's back in the asylum, as shocked as anyone. And it says, here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. And so what we're seeing in this paragraph is examples of things that cannot keep me sober as an alcoholic. So threats or consequences cannot keep me sober. The loss of family and position, losing loved ones, losing jobs, cannot keep me sober. Pain and suffering, both mental and physical, cannot keep me sober. And we'll talk about some other things that can't keep me sober, but here's what I want to point out about the power of alcoholism. I want them to keep me sober. I don't want to keep losing jobs. I don't want to keep losing family and friends and loved ones. I don't want to keep going and ending up back in pain again and again and again. I don't want that. And yet I can't stop myself. That's the power of the obsession of the mind. So it says, he had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic. So again, something that cannot keep me sober, self-knowledge. Knowledge about myself, knowledge about how my mind works, how, my moods, my triggers, my, all the things. None of that can keep me sober. Doing a lot of the inner work and CBT, DBT, all of that wonderful cannot keep me sober as an alcoholic. It does not work. But also much knowledge about myself, as in my ability to quote the book. Now, I am able to quote the book, but that's not because I sat around trying to memorize it. It's literally because I've taken so many people through the book. But my knowledge, my ability to quote various parts of the book from memory, my ability to tell you this guy is Ralph until Rob tells me it's not Ralph. My ability to reference different things and tie together, that cannot keep me sober. The only thing that can keep me sober is a spiritual experience that I continue to grow, or a spiritual experience and I continue to seek deeper or more experiences. That's it. And that's rude. That's rude. I was kind of hoping some of this stuff would keep me sober. Nope. So it says he had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in the favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if he only mixed it with milk. And so what alcoholism looks like is I put a glass of alcohol on one side of a bar. And on the other side of the bar, I put everything that I love, everything that I care about, my hopes, my goals, my dreams. And I cannot stop myself from going back to that drink. I can visually see in this. I'm trying to paint a bit of a visual picture. It's one side, everything that I want in life, and on the other, it's one drink. And in this moment, we're all like, yeah, I want everything that I want in life. That's what I want. But the power of alcoholism is that I cannot choose everything that I want. I will take that first drink. I will go back to it again and again. And if I cannot choose, what that means is I have lost the power of choice, which is to say, I will drink again. So it says, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, and Rob's like, I got the words, I got the definitions. Don't you worry. But whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. It is insane to go back to the thing that has cost me everything that I have wanted in life, and that is a synonym for the obsession of the mind. And it says, how can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? Now, that lack of proportion of the ability to think straight, that is another synonym for the obsession of the mind. Absolutely. So that lack of proportion. So that idea that this, like, basically, I'm seeing the situation through a distorted lens. The reality is that every time I drink, or almost every time I drink, there are consequences that I don't want because I cannot control the amount that I take. Got my glasses on, I can see that that is reality. But this distorted perception of the ability to think straight, to think straight is to say, yeah, I don't want to drink. I need to stay sober. I want to stay sober, obviously. But the lack of proportion of the ability to think straight, it looks like this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. Suddenly, you can drink. You know, that effort, that is the obsession of the mind. And that's what we are talking about. And so next week, I'm gonna end on the time that I am always asked to end on time and never do, which is on time. I'm gonna end it there. That's so thoughtful of me to do the thing I was always asked and be responsible. How gracious. But next week, we're going to get into, and why I'm stopping here is because this next paragraph, man, this is a paragraph that has really come alive. And I hope you come back and you get to see this next paragraph come alive. We got visual metaphors, we got props, we got the whole shebang. And I hope that it really helps to explain what we're doing with the obsession of the mind and what we're trying to illuminate here. So with that, I will toss it over to you, Peppa. Thank y'all for coming.